Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to day 2 of the to-do list project. If you've spun the day 1 video, you'll see that we did a little bit in terms of setting things up, technologies used, building just a very bare bones basic setup. That was mainly using CRUD methods for the database, so we were able to build the database. Since then we've expanded it quite a bit, added a bit of validation. We've also done some mappers, a bit more models as well. We've used models too, in addition to controllers. We've also done a testing suite, so testing using things like Makito and Spies. For those of you who don't know what that means, we'll get into that in a little bit in the video. For those of you who do, then by all means, all I encourage you to do, guys, if you can leave feedback in the comments down below, let me know what you thought of the video, like, dislike, tell me if it helped you, and more importantly, tell me whether you think you could do something better. This is an open community, so I just want a chance place for everyone to be able to learn, understand different things, and the way I'm going to do that is by doing videos like this along with other kind of videos. So, how this is going to work. So I'm going to break this down a little bit, and you'll find I do have notes that I'm referring to. That's just to keep this video structured. Okay, first bit we'll go into is models and mapping. So last time I spoke about models, I only did a little bit of it, but we'll go into what I've done with the models, how I've got them working. Mapping, same thing, so we'll talk about how I've used mapping and what's called map struct. We'll go into that in a little bit, might help you with your own projects. After that, we'll go to a bit of service and business logic. Now that's obviously been improved quite a bit since last time, expanding on what we originally built. And then I will also go on to controllers and routing, what we've done there. I will also just go through my testing. Okay, a lot of that has really helped make sure my project works, and I'll tell you examples as to how it helped me in particular. We will also then, once we've done that, go through a running locally and health check, so I'll show you what it looks like, and then you'll also be able to see how it looks like from the first API call, like first client call that I've done from my front end, which you'll see, over to my back end. And how we've done that, we've used JavaScript, and I'll also walk you through how to set up a very, very bare bones basic request to your back end. So, with that being said, let's go. So, ladies and gentlemen, models and mapping. You will see this is the model. Now, last time when I spoke about it, we only had what's called entities. That's using a mix of Hibernate, okay, which also uses Java persistence annotations. And how it works is what we've essentially done is built the model. This is what the backend actually relies on manipulating, and I will go through what that looks like now. So, for the first part, I'll show you this is the TaskObjectModel. So that one's got the ID for the task name, okay, task type, task level, and task description. Now you'll find, obviously with Java being Java, I have set them to private, and we've used getters and setters, okay? Done that for, well, 2 reasons really. One, it will allow when the entity comes through, okay, and when it tries to map everything over, okay, or create the task object, it just makes it a lot easier when it comes to being able to set different attributes and also get different attributes if you want to manipulate it. Helps with solid principles, so it's really important to make sure that when you're using solid principles, you're not keeping things kind of open to be altered anywhere in the code unnecessarily. It stops people accidentally changing different bits of data, okay, and just keeps the object safe. Next one we got, that's a new from last time that you'll see we've also done, is an update task request package. Now before I go into that, I will also highlight, you'll find we've got 2 things here, okay. One's what's called an all-args constructor, okay, so what that essentially means is it uses the initial arguments, okay, to build the object and to populate those attributes. The public task model that's a no-args constructor, what that allows is that allows it to be initialized, and then it allows the setters to do their work in setting different attributes. That's particularly useful when we're using Hibernate and Java persistence, as that's what it's required, or what it needs to be able to make the entities. The update task request package, now this changed from last time. Last time what we'll see we had was we just had the ID, replacement value, and field update directly in the methods where it speaks to the database. That's slightly changed. Now why is it changed? When the front end and the JavaScript requests or sends a request off to the server to ask for data, instead of doing it where you're, when it comes to this side of things, to make it easier, what we've essentially done is used the fact that it goes into JSON when it cuts across to be able to build an object. Now this is the object that the request sends out when it needs to update a task, okay, and you'll see a bit more how that works when we go into the service logic. Same thing again, so it's got the null, well, null, but the no args constructor, similar to the update task package all args constructor. Okay. When we go on to the next part, we'll then move on and start looking at the task mapper. Now you guys saw this last time. This uses mapstruct. For those of you who don't know, mapstruct is fairly good. Okay, it's quite good to be fair when it comes to swapping things across the different entities. The key thing you need to do is, in the first example, we're turning the task object model, okay, into a task entity. Now what you'll find is if you go into the task object model, for example, task name here has to match exactly what it says here. If you don't do that, that's when it starts to have issues, and that's when it won't work. Okay, it's useful because it means you can swap things from one kind of object to another class of objects dynamically, and it makes it easier when you're dealing with data from a request to your database, for example, in the backend side. With that being the case though, guys, if you're unaware, when you do use mapper, something I didn't know until quite a while ago, the component model bit, that's what you find in Stack Overflow, that is based on typically on what you're using. So for example, you've got a different one for Spring Boot. Okay, you can have a look, it tells you how to set it up, and you get another one as well, which is JSR something. I can't remember what the rest of it is. I'll attach it in the comments below. Let me have a quick look, actually, 1 second. There we go. So if I bring this across, you will see with this one, guys, we've got similar thing. So this is for Spring. They use component model Spring. Okay, how that works is that just helps with the injection. So this is an interface, it's not an object. So what it means is we use injection to allow Micronaut, which is what we're using, Micronaut build, to be able to automatically set up those parts of the code. Okay, which is what it does. Moving on from that one, if you look at moving on to the business logic side, I'm going to do this in stages to make it easier. You'll find that we've still only got the one at the minute, the task management service, okay, and then we've also got the adapter service, so two different things. The adapter service is the only thing that speaks directly to the database, okay. The task management service just uses methods from the adapter service to be able to do a variety of different things. Last time, when you saw the video, what we did is we built the adapter service, or built some of it at least. We have made adjustments since then, so you'll find we've still got create task. Okay, that persists the task object that we're creating by changing it to an entity and then pushing it to the database with Entity Manager. It does a system out print line as well for tasks created, useful when you're debugging. Okay, useful to let you know whether something's gone right or wrong. Following on from that, we've also got fetch all tasks. Now I've done this in two different ways. We've got one for fetch all tasks and we've got one for fetch task by ID. How that works, it's for fetching all tasks, it creates a query using the Entity Manager, a typed query, because we know we're going to get back a task entity, or a list of them, and it does that by creating a query here, selecting T, which is anything, can be whatever you want, from all rows with a task entity, and that's also T, and that's what it will return. Okay, when it returns it, it uses a result list, because we got more than one result, okay, and it stores it as that list. And then once it's stored in a list, it simply goes through every task entity that's been returned and it swaps it to a model. So that allows, as I said before, the task object models to be able to be manipulated in the rest of the code easily. It also means if, for example, you wanted custom methods for the object, so you wanted the task object model to be able to have access to methods that you didn't want the entities to have, then you can separate your concerns. Okay, you're probably thinking, well, where's that useful? Well, you might want to, for example, have, if we go into the task object model, you may want to, for example, have something else that's created or added into the task object model, such as you can have a method to print out all the attributes. You might want to have that in the task object model, but you might not want that in task entity. So as I said, separates your concerns, makes it easier. If we keep going with that one, so you'll see with the fetch all tasks, there's also one for retrieving a task. That uses Entity Manager's find method, okay? It finds a task with the ID, okay? And it will be a task entity class, okay? That just specifies what it's actually going to be looking through, so it knows it needs to find the ID matching of that class. It will return it, okay? It swaps it out to an entity, okay? It does that, it swaps out to a model. It does that because, once again, you want to be manipulating your models, not the entities. For update task, similar thing. So that uses the update task request package. This wasn't the same from last time. We've also added some null checkers as well. How it works is it goes through, okay, it finds that task with the ID, okay, in the update request package. It will go through with some checks. So if the entity is null, okay, it throws a new error, legal argument. If the field to update is null, for example, throws it again. If the replacement value is null, throws it again. That's important because it just means you can see quite easily what's gone right or what's gone wrong, and it also means it stops anything from being updated or changed if it's not valid. Moving on from that, we've got a switch case statement. Okay, so once it's happy, okay, and all those pass, it will then go through and get the field that's needed to be updated. It will then go through and see if any of those cases match with the field that's been updated. So for example, in this one, if we put task name, then it would stop here because it can see its task name, and then it would then set the entity to be that new task name. And it will do that by setting the task name as our replacement value, which we would have specified. Okay. Now you can also use entity flush, which I've not seen before and I haven't necessarily used it this time. It just means it commits any changes. It should commit them anyway. From testing, it works absolutely fine, so I've got no worries there. But that is something that some people do use. But I've not implemented myself. So by all means, have a look into that. Let me know if you've seen it or used it yourself and if it's been any use. It does that for all of the fields, okay, so you can alter anything. The last one is a default, so what that means is if none of those cases match, then all it will do is throw in a legal argument exception saying that it doesn't exist, so that it can't find it. Alright? If we carry on, you'll see we've got delete task, okay? How that works is that uses the find once again, okay, has another check to make sure it's not null, and then if it's not null, it will then use entity manager remove to get rid of that entity from the database. I will say as well, you're probably wondering why, at least some of you don't necessarily know, why aren't we using more SQL? So you'll see, for example, if we go up here, we've used a bit of SQL in here, but we've not used any SQL for some of these other methods like remove and like find. Well, that's because we use an entity manager. Now that's a library of code that just makes it easier for you to be able to communicate to your databases, okay? It has some pre-built methods in there, so instead of having to manually write out all of these query statements, we can use that to do it instead. You still could, if you wanted to, create your own queries, and that's something that some people could do. That's more important if, say, you wanted real custom control. So say if you had a particularly long query and you didn't want to have to fetch all the queries or find them, then check them, because that can be a lot. Instead, you can, for example, create your own SQL statement. So you could select C from TaskEntity, then you could have some conditionals. So where the ID is 7, or where the ID is 7 and the level is more than 6, for example. Or difficulty level is more than 6. So it just gives you a bit more control. Okay. So, with that being the case, if you carry on, you'll also find we have the couple of getters and setters here. Okay. I've done this purely for testing. Okay, so it makes it easier. Why have I done this for testing? Well, when it comes to testing, obviously we don't want any of the data to actually be touched. So to avoid this, how it works is you'll be able to get and set your own task mappers and entities, so that if you did this as a test, you have greater control over what the entity will respond with, and you've got the safety of knowing that your code will not touch any live customer data. That's one of the things which I think a lot of companies are doing more and more now. Testing is becoming increasingly important, because if you don't test your code, it leaves you vulnerable. You've probably seen a lot of cyber attacks and things like that. One of the main ones most of them seem to be using now, hacker-wise, is obviously the social engineering side. But it is still important, guys. If you've got code, test it. Okay, make sure it works. I've spent at least, let's say, 2/3 of my time that I've spent creating this code also on testing the code. So it is important. If we carry on, you'll see we've got the task management service. Okay, now this one uses some other things, okay, that make it a bit easier. Particularly, it uses loggers. Okay, now some of you might not know what a logger is. So a logger essentially allows you, when the code is running in the background, I'll show you, I'll quickly run this and I'll show you what I mean. It'll make a bit more sense. And it's certainly how I understood it. And you'll be able to apply this, guys, as well, if you haven't, to your own code. So if you want to be able to test things, make sure it works, and at least it's another method where you are able to test it. Yeah, it's trying to run my test now. We don't want to do that. 1 second. That's not very useful. Oh, come on, you silly goose. 1 second. This is the beauty of it. We do the same thing for all tough times. Brilliant. So, if we scroll up, you'll see here, yeah, there's logs, okay? And it'll have something on there, info. You'll see on some of them it says, for example, debug, okay? Also has things such as warn and things like that, okay? That's useful because what it essentially means is you can just log different errors, and if you wanted a clear way of doing your kind of system out prints, then you can use logger just to make it a bit easier to understand. You've got to consider if you had system out prints like everywhere, I mean guys, you know, you'd be having, you know, lines and lines of code which aren't necessarily too structured. What the logger allows you to do, okay, is be able to create your own errors that will come through similar to this, okay? So it's a bit clearer. I will show you as well another method that you can use. If we go over to my logback, okay, XML, you can actually find loggers which you can also put in here. Now, why do you want to put this here? Well, what it means is you can log and search for specific issues. So if you want to debug, for example, it can help you with debugging. If you want to trace, for example, it will show you the stack trace. If you want to display something in particular, then you can ask it to. All of it just helps you to be able to understand what's gone wrong, okay? Now, you don't need to have all of these, but I've done them, and I'll show you an example of why I've done them. For the Micronaut, for the Kakari, I've used debug there, okay, so you can see what it's doing. I've also done the same for Micronaut data. Once again, I can see what it's doing. I've done the same for Hibernate, okay, for any SQL as well. And then you'll also have the JDBC, okay, along with any other SQL there's trace on there. That's just helpful if you get things wrong. Now you can find most of those literally online. If you search up for loggers and whatever library you're using, typically you can find out what one you can use. That's what I did most of the time when it comes to development, and I've spoken to a lot of developers, they've all said the same thing. It's not necessarily about understanding in full detail what we're using, it's understanding enough of what we're using to be able to use it safely and to be able to fulfill a purpose. Because you'll find that in code, and at least I found this, there's so much out there, and when you go through and you're building things, you're not always going to remember every little bit. But if you're able to use and leverage tools that are out there now, AI, you know, you've got other websites as well, like for example Java Docs, you've got the documentation for it, you've also got Geeks, you've also got as well MDM, you've got lots of stuff, and if you can get used to searching for things, you'll be fine. With that being the case though, if we carry on going, you'll also see that we have the second part, which is the, 1 second, there it is, which is the kind of error side of things. So for this one, for example, create task, okay, operates in the same way. We use inject. Why are we using inject? Well, we don't want the adapter service, which you'll see here, to be created as an instance, okay? We want it to be injected by Micronaut because of these dependencies. You've got the entity manager and the task manager. If you try to create a new instance of this stuff yourself, that is going to be where it goes wrong, okay? Because it doesn't like new instances when you're trying to inject things, okay? Let Micronaut do it for you, make your life easier. With that being the case, if we carry on, for the same first method, create task, it looks very similar, not really any difference. What is different, however, is some of the safeguards. We've used what we call a validate task model, okay? Now that exclamation mark just means if it's false. So if the validate task object model comes back as false when it tries to validate it, it will, sorry, if it comes back as not, what's it? I've lost what I was going to say there. God, I'm losing my mind now. If it comes back, for example, as true, because it's been validated, then it will let you carry on, okay, and create the task. If it isn't true, okay, that's when it'll have a try catch to catch the exception. Now, why is that important? Well, that's important because then any exceptions that go through, you can print the stack trace for, you can log the error and turn the cause into a string. What you could as well do, something else I've just noticed, This is why coding with an audience is fun, because you realise you can do things. What you might also want to do is, if, for example, you wanted to check this too, you can say else if, there we go. If it comes back as being, one second, there we go. If it comes back as being false, 1 second. It's the only problem when you read through it, you've got to quickly go through it and make sure it's right. There we go, of course, got an empty body. So that will go through, and then, I know, I don't want to do that, we're going to log, aren't we? See guys, this is the thing. There we go, and this is where as well I love IntelliJ. It can see what you're trying to do. So what that will do then, I've just changed that now, so look at that, we're learning, is I've just made it where it also checks if it's not been validated, it will warn, okay, and that'll come up on the log. It'll also have a try catch, okay, to stop it from having any issues where it might break the code, so it will just let the user know. Update task, similar thing, okay, so it will go through, it'll try to update the task, it uses that adaptor service method that's already got safeguards in, but if it fails, then it will log the error, okay. It will also throw a new illegal argument exception, okay. Now that one there is purely there because if, for example, when it tries to update the task, it can't find the entity for any reason, which is the only reason why it wouldn't be able to work, then no, never mind, we don't need that. I'm making changes on the go, guys. We don't need that one, never mind, because there are other things that can go wrong, see? Learning as you go. This is what I go through pretty much every day. And when you carry on, you'll have the delete task, okay, so that's an option. That will let you create your delete and task request, okay, once again it logs it as info. It will try to delete it. If it deletes it successfully, it'll let you know as info. If it fails, then it'll do the same thing, okay, it prints off that value. Fetch your task, same thing, got same safeguards. Same thing with fetch task with ID, same safeguards. And then validate task model, all that will simply do, okay, is get a string of errors, okay, and then what we'll do is when it goes through and it loops through, if any of the aspects are null, okay, or invalid, then what simply happens is it will add that error, okay, to the string, to the array list of errors, essentially. And then if the errors are empty, then it will return, well, if the errors are not empty, and if errors empty is false, then it will return false because it's not been validated, and then it will warn you. Well, it will let you know afterwards that the object is invalid. It won't warn you, will it? Because why are you warning something that's good? It will put on info if obviously there's no errors, that the task object model is valid, and it will return true. So that's a good way of safeguarding, guys. That is it for the service layer side from what we've done last time. Let's move on to the controllers. So guys, for the controllers, they've not really changed very much. So all we've got is really simple simple services, okay, that are accessed through that port. You've got delete task, update task, get task with ID. It will specify the task ID. Now why is that important? When it comes through, the body of the request will have to contain that task ID. And that's something I've learned recently. Get task and create task, all quite simple. And it will inject that adapter service. Why does it inject the adapter service? Because if it doesn't have the adapter service, then it won't be able to use it. Now what you'll find is the adapter service currently is just using that. The reason I'm not used that just yet is because I've not got around to doing it that way yet. I was testing one thing at a time. Controller was the easiest way of doing it. But we'll see what that looks like in a bit. That's all it does, guys, and that's it for the main logic side. We've not gone much further than that. We'll go on to testing next. But by all means, if you have any questions about what we went through there, feel free to let us know down in the comments below, okay? I'll try to get back to every comment I can. If I don't know the answer, I'll certainly try to find out where I can get the answer for you. But thank you for paying attention to the service part. Let's move on to testing. So guys, this is the testing. So when we look at this, there's going to be quite a bit there, okay? It is going to be a fair bit, so we're going to try to go through this as easily as I possibly can. A couple of things you'll find we're using, okay? Some of it we're not, but a fair bit of it we are. Makito, okay, we're using Assertions as well, okay, that's using JUnit, which is a testing framework. You've also got as well the Entity Manager, okay, you've got the queries as well, and you've also got some array lists that we're using. When we go for this, you'll see it says Micronaut test. It does that so it can inject any beans, okay, that are required. If you go through, you'll see it says TaskObjectModel, okay, that's there. That's for the, different scenarios that we might encounter, okay. So, what we will do is when I show you this, you'll find that I've tested these to make sure that all my safeguards work. So you'll find we've got a variety of different scenarios. We've got a TaskObjectModel with an invalid name, which is null. We've got an empty one. We've got a type that's null, a type that's empty, a level that's null, and a level that's empty, a description that's null, a description that's empty, okay? And then we've also got all invalid. That's because it's a list, okay, of our TaskObject models. We've done a setup. Now the before each is really useful. What that essentially does is mean before each test, okay, it will do this method, whatever you want it to be. Now that can be useful if you want it to clear a certain list before each test, okay? Stops essentially one result from one test being accidentally pushed forward to another test, okay? So that's just something to keep in mind. For us, I've done it before each test. It sets up all these new task object models, okay, that are in there, and you'll see it does them as a collection, okay, for convenience, which is all there. That's done every single time. That's done for the testing, for the validity. The tests you'll see are marked with the annotation @test, and they're also marked just underneath with the @display name. Now, why would you want display name? Well, when you do the normal test, if anything's wrong with them, they'll show you the line, but using display names can help you identify what test has failed, so that if there's a particular error with a new feature or whatever it might be, it's just easier to understand what test has failed, and it could help you resolve the problem quicker to get to the root source. For the first one, for create task, let me go through this. I'll try to go through as slowly as I can. We've got the new task management service, okay? Now we're mocking that. Now you're probably wondering, well, why are we mocking that? We're mocking the task management service because I want control over what the task management service does, okay? And also means that any kind of methods or anything like that, we control. And the reason we've also got that null is because we're only using the validity tool with this. So we're only making sure that it will create the task, try to get through, use the method to create a task, and then verify there's no more interactions with the service, okay? Does that by going through, okay? Gives you the task objects, tries to create the task. If the task is created through the service, okay, at that stage what it will then do, okay, is it will then verify that the service used the create task method, okay, and it will also verify that there's no more interactions with the service. Now, we can't really test this unless you wanted to build a whole fake database, so we're just testing the behavior to make sure it behaves as expected. Next one is task creates task validates task correctly, so this uses our validation schools. So you'll see with this, it creates a new task management service. Once again, a mock, we don't want it to interact with any real databases. The task object model, once again, creates a new task, fills it in, this is the valid one. It goes through, and it goes and it says when it tries to validate the task object using that correctly, task object model, then it will call the real method, okay? Now, that's important, because what it means is when it goes through to validate the task object model, okay, and it tries to validate it with the task object model, okay, it will check and use the real method, okay, to see whether the result is what's expected. And that's what it should be. The next bit, the next bit I've actually spotted an issue on, which I've just realised. It's surprising how much it helps talking about your code. The next one, okay, we'll do the same thing with all of the methods. Okay, it tries to validate them to see if the service, when it tries to validate the object, will give it a either null name, whatever it might be. It goes through all the methods. Okay, we should have the first one as true. Okay, the rest of them should be absolutely false. The mistake I've made, actually, I did something fun, guys. I've got a good idea of the mistake I made. I'm going to leave you guys in the comments down below to let me know what mistake you think I've made, and we'll see who's right. I will comment back and let the person know if they get it right who was correct, and I'll let you guys know as well. That also goes through, okay, using the verify. Once again, that's testing the behavior to make sure that the service at most uses that method 9 times. Alright, so it won't do it anymore, and 9 times is the same amount of times we use it. Next bit, okay, same thing. So we've got test throws when error entity is not found. That goes through, that creates a new task management service this time, which we do actually want, and it will also create a new adaptor service, which once again we do actually want. Now the problem here is when you mock it, okay, all of the methods return null. So what I'm going to do is spend a bit of time doing this. Okay. 1 second. I'm going to show you here actually. This would be a slight debug challenge, not just that. Okay, that's fine, so we can get rid of that. We don't necessarily need that. So there we go. Wait and see whether it likes this one. Yeah. Now what we've done there, guys, in case you don't know, is we've used a spy. Now the reason we used a spy is because we need to use the real methods from the task management service, but we don't want to actually create or manipulate anything within the task management service, so any attributes or anything like that. So we've used a spy, okay? We've used a spy so that it will go through, does the same thing, checks them all, okay, asserts them all, and then also verifies them all. Now you'll see earlier it said it can't do it because it's not a mock. Verify, okay, can't verify like mocks. So it can't verify behavior of mocks. It will verify behavior of spies because that will call the real methods, okay? Keep going. The next one just tests where the entity is not, well, it throws error when the entity is not found. So that goes through, same thing, creates a new adapter service. It creates a new task management service, okay? Creates a mock of the entity manager. Now the reason we've done the mock of the entity manager is that entity manager has access to the database. We do not want the entity manager touching the database in any way, shape, form whatsoever. So the mock allows the object to be used within arguments and for its behavior to be manipulated to our ways without actually being kind of created. So like a fake. Hence the name mock. What it does then is it will set the entity manager to be this mock that we've created, and then it will go through, okay, mock and update with task request package, okay, and then what we've done is use the when and then return. Now why is this important? Well, it's important because what it allows you to do is say when X does this, I want you to then do X does this. Now it could be then return, you could have then do, okay, you variety of different things you can do. I'd encourage you to look at Makito documentation, okay? It's a bit too much to cover in this video, but I'll certainly do a video on it if you guys want. Let me know down in the comments. God, very warm outside. So, for this one, we've said when the entity manager, okay, goes to find, okay, the task entity class, because that's what it's going to be finding, and it uses the argument equivalent to any long, okay? Now the long is obviously what we're using when we use that method, but what we don't want is to have a long of a specific value. We want this to be of any specific value as long as it's a certain kind of data. So you can use any long, you can use any string, there's a lot of them you can use, but that's a way of being able to cover the behavior when a method is used with any particular data type as an argument. Now you'll see as well, okay, we got the equivalent there, okay? You can't have what's called argument matches. You can't have that on both of them, okay? You can only have it on one, or you can have it on the other, all right? Now in terms of the reasoning behind that one, I had this noted somewhere. 1 second. 1 second. Oh, let me go over that. 1 second. I had it in my notes somewhere. Right, so yeah, with that one, guys, I've just had a quick look, so I need to refresh my memory, because this took me a while to get my head around. So the reason why we're using the EQ bit there, okay, is it uses what's called matches. So when you want to do the matches, you'll find on this method, for example, we'll use this one as a quick example. You'll see it has to be the equivalent of a TaskEntity class, but it can be any long, okay? But it means that it has to, that what's actually returned has to match that TaskEntity class. It is not particularly bothered what long is returned, okay? So it's the same thing if we go up, okay, to where we had our other method. There we go, okay? We're saying it can be any TaskEntity class, okay? It's not really too bothered, but it has to be equivalent to any long, okay? That's the argument. It's important to have that, okay? If you only have one, for example, I'll show you what happens. Let me give you an example, demonstration. It was at this point, guys, I realised that I did it slightly wrong. For those of you who don't know, so that you don't have to watch me fail miserably as I tried to fix this, the equivalent essentially means it matches with anything, okay? You can't have the equivalent to be of a particular class, for example, or you can't have the equivalent to be of any long, because what we're saying there is that particular section has to equal the exact same as any long. The problem with that is any long, there's obviously multipliers as that could be, whereas equivalent means it has to actually have a thing. What exactly do you want it to be equal to? So you'll notice on the one that I had in this example, I had beforehand I had it to the equivalent of TaskEntity.class, which means that the argument had to be TaskEntity.class, but it could be any long being found. So that's the ID, so it can be any ID. Now when I did that and I tried to fix it, I couldn't quite think about that at the time, but I thought I'd leave this bit in, because what it shows you is how you see some people online and they'll literally do it, they'll solve a problem in 4 or 5 seconds. Believe it or not, if you're not too experienced, this is exactly what it looks like. So I'm not going to delete this section, but you're more than welcome if you want to just skip over it, but you will see very quickly how I tried to fix it and how I tripped myself up. But after a bit of research and looking back at it, it's a really good example for you guys to see what some coders do. Wonderful. So you'll see with that one, so you got, 1 second, when using matches, all arguments have to be provided by matches, okay? So same method, so you can say anything, okay, that's equivalent to the string by matcher, okay? So the equivalent just allows it to match something with something else. That's my understanding. I'm probably very wrong with that, by the way, so I'd encourage you to probably have a look as well yourselves, because that still slightly blows my mind. So if I put that back in, we go from there. There we go. Now that we've got it back. Okay. Broken my own code. 1 second, ladies and gentlemen. Let me quickly have a quick look at that one. So this is where we commonly call it's broken on me. Okay. So I am going to know that. We will have a look into that, okay guys? I can't look at that now, but I'll have a look into it in a bit, and I'll let you know what happens. So, it's the same thing with all the others, okay? They go through, okay? They test if anything's been found, okay? They do the same with everything. It does the same when we go through for the, updating tasks, okay? Test if the task updates correctly, goes through, creates fakes, uses spies as well, and it does the same on pretty much all of them. I am conscious of the fact that this has gone on for 40 minutes now video-wise, and there's still a fair bit. So what I will do is I will pause the video there, okay, and I will go into a bit more detail on the next video. If you enjoyed, guys, if you can, like, comment down below what you've learned, what you think you'd use yourselves, and also comment down below any improvements or feedback, okay? It all really helps me learn, and I really appreciate every single one of you. Thank you, guys, and have a really good rest of your day. Take care. Bye-bye.